Well, hello and welcome to what is the 205th episode of the Adoption and Fostering podcast with me, Al Coates himself.
Scott Casson-Nolaney.
And this evening we have a guest. We have Laura Smith, who is a PhD student at Southampton. Hello, Laura Smith.
Hi guys, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to get to chat and to get to see some of this, lovely banter you have on the podcast.
Well,
You'll regret saying that. You'll
let's
regret
not
saying that, let's be
let's
honest.
not aim too high.
I can give as
Um,
good as I get, trust me.
oh, well,
Rubbing my hands here,
here
just
we
warming
go.
up.
Right, just get me coat off because it's going to turn ugly. And interestingly, as we were having our pre-chat, we realised that Scott and Laura have a connection.
Well, kind of. I mean, we've not met each other,
No, it's a
Yeah, no.
connection.
but Laura is University of Southampton, and I used to, in my pre-FASD Ireland days, used to run
Very much.
I used to run and I would say that with my fingers in the air for those that are listening, back in the day student pub in Southampton, just next to the university.
It still
Um,
is, yeah.
is it
It's
still?
maintained that reputation. Well, there's a
Wow,
lot of places to be in Southampton, but the
there
Mitre is
is. You're right.
definitely it's one of them. It's like the
Wow.
pinnacle.
Yeah. I mean, we
Wow.
took it on after they'd had the previous landlord, his family had been tied up in the flat upstairs and kept hostage. So I'm not sure what kind of place it was before we got there, but yeah,
Yeah.
it was definitely an experience. But I loved that pub. I absolutely loved it. It was just the best place to be with students. And beginning of the term, they had their £20 notes. The end of the term, they had their pound coins, kind of thing. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it was a lot of fun.
A lot of like pinball machines still in
Oh
there
wow.
and pool tables,
God.
Wow.
classics.
Yeah, I absolutely. But yeah.
Well, I feel like I'm learning an awful lot about Southampton. I once went to Southampton a long, long time ago, Central Hall. There you go.
Mm,
Yeah, I was
place
a,
to be.
Now, when I'm in Southampton, I get on a cruise ship. You know,
oh,
Mm.
of course, yeah. Highfalutin. So anyway, that's slightly an awkward connection there that you used to run a pub and now you're FASD Ireland. But we'll cover over that,
exactly.
shall we? I think
But
we almost got away with it. I think no one will pick that up. Laura, before we get on, Scott's got a little bit of news that he wants to share with the group. Share with the group,
I,
Scott. What is your
I
news?
love how you say that. I was just going to bring you up to speed with the conference organisation.
That's news. That's
And I
news.
know that we cross the sea, don't we? We cross the Irish Sea, the UK, Ireland, Ireland, the UK, Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland, England, blah blah blah. Um, But yeah,
Yes.
our FASD in Ireland conference, 22nd of May. For anybody who might be interested, you may have stumbled across the podcast. You may be from Ireland. You may actually just think, wow, what's going on in Ireland? And is it easy to get to? Which it is, because Al's here all the time, can't get rid of him. But
Yep.
yeah, our FASD in Ireland conference, 22nd of May. Some amazing speakers, some great breakout sessions, two panel discussions. And I'll just very quickly run through the speakers because they are amazing speakers.
Uh-huh.
The first one we got is Jolanta Burke, who is the researcher at our Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, who is currently doing research for us into wellbeing in FASD. Then we've got the amazing Raja Mukherjee, who is a friend of the show. Al, don't do
He's
that
not been
because
on the show.
he has been on the show.
Are you sure?
I am very sure you'll be
That's
editing this
embarrassing.
bit out because you look like a complete
Ooh.
fool. Yeah.
I'll tell
Hmm.
it's not the first time a
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, well, no. And then we've got Professor Farhana Sharif, who is a consultant pediatrician at Mullingar Regional Hospital, which she has been involved in FASD diagnoses in Ireland, even though there's not diagnostic process in Ireland. And then finally, we've got Dr. Aisling Sheehan, who's from the Health Service Executive, or the HSE as we know it in Ireland, which is equivalent to the NHS, but it's
Uh-huh.
obviously a little bit different. And she is I can't remember her official job title, so you'll have to edit that bit out as well. But anyway, she is responsible for the kind of the stuff around FASD within the HSE and the public health messaging and all that sort of stuff. And then we've got five
Yeah.
amazing breakouts. Al Coates is doing one. Oh, sorry,
Who?
you're doing two. You're doing
Yeah,
two.
yeah. Yeah.
First one is parents and carers and peer support.
Yeah, yeah.
Second one is challenging and aggressive behavior. And then we've got someone else doing NVR in schools. I'm saying someone else because I'm not sure they'd like their
To be
names mentioned
confirmed.
on the
To
podcast.
to be
No,
confirmed.
it's all confirmed. It's just their names. I'm not sure they'd like. We have
What
our
the court order or something that they've got out against you?
yeah, against FASD Ireland. Then we've got therapies and how they can help by our chair of advisory boards, who is a speech and language therapist, Kate Fitzherbert, and a colleague, Alva Howard. And then we've got what else we've got? We've got NEPS, which is the National
Yeah.
Education Psychology Service.
Are we
They're
near
doing a
the end?
piece. No. And then
Okay,
we've got
just
one more.
checking.
What's the other one? See, you do this
What?
to me and then you put me off, and that's just not fair. It's just not fair.
It's,
And then we've got another one. I can't remember what that is. Might come back to it if I remember mid
just
podcast,
shout
Laura,
it
and I
out.
just shout it
Shout
out,
out.
then
Yeah.
that's why. And then we've got two panel discussions. One is about the research because there's a lot of university people in Ireland who didn't really know about FASD until we kind of set up FASD
Yep.
Ireland and got connected. So we're speaking to them as well on a panel discussion about how research can help to support people who live with FASD in Ireland. And then the second one is obviously, because you know me, I love to get people involved who live with this because they are the
Yeah,
voice that
yeah,
we need to listen to. So the
absolutely.
people who live with FASD and potentially some parents and carers as well, there's going to be a panel about that. So fasdireland.ie/conference, and you can have a look. It's very accessible from airports. Shannon Airport is the closest. We say that because we have half a dozen people who've booked in
Oh,
from the UK. No, proper. Like people in
from
the
the
UK are
UK.
interested in what we're doing. So
Oh,
I feel like I need to mention it. Yeah, Shannon Airport. You can fly with the low cost option or the
high
less low
cost.
cost option.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And we'll put the links in the notes as well. That'd be
absolutely. Yeah.
great. Yeah.
And I'm not
Sorry.
plugging it for that reason. I'm just saying, like, it's here. If people want to
No,
come along, absolutely welcome. It's not just for Ireland.
no, I think that it's pertinent to all of us because I think that's what is it, 75% of children within the care system or have been through the care system are impacted by
Absolutely. Yeah.
alcohol exposure. So I think
Mhm.
it's an absolutely laudable conference, and I'm very excited to go. Sorry about that, Laura. That was it's not your best, Scott. I'll be honest with you. You've been pithier, but
Wow. Wow.
Ouch.
look,
No
I
hold
know.
barred.
And do you know what? We did two conferences during COVID, and did we sell them out because of me? Yes, we
because
did.
of us,
No,
because of
because
Conference
of me.
man.
us.
It was me. It was me.
Right? Okay, fair enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough. I'll give you that. I'll give
Just
you that.
Is
saying.
there going to be any online elements? Like, are you going to stream or record the
Oh,
talk?
do you know we don't even have Wi-Fi in it? No, I'm joking. We do have Wi-Fi in Ireland. So because this is our first one, we're doing it on. We're trying to keep the costs really low.
Yeah.
But what we will be doing is recording, if we can, some sessions so that people can actually watch them
Mm,
online afterwards. Um, we would, do you know what? If I could commission somebody to come along and do the whole thing and like bring camera crews and the whole jing bang. But what we will be doing is I'll be recruiting my honourable friend Al Coates MBE to do some sound bites with some of the
CF.
speakers, some of the people
Very
who are
nice.
visiting and all that sort of stuff. So we'll be kind of collating information
Yeah,
and
we
stuff
should
like that.
record it and you should release it through FASD Ireland podcast. Well,
Well,
this
I
feels like
know
it's turned
that.
into a
I
team
know
meeting,
this,
not
but
a.
it's
It's
like
not a team meeting. It's a
I'm trying
podcast.
I'm trying to organize the conference as well as think about the other things as well. So yes,
I,
as offers come in to help, we will be
right.
grabbing them and
Okay.
taking them, running with them. So
Absolutely.
yes, Laura, you're absolutely bang on with that because I think that actually it would do other places good to hear what's not going on and what's going on in different countries as well because
Yeah.
Perfect.
everywhere is so different. So yeah.
Right. Well, let's make that
Absolutely.
happen. Let's work out a way of getting it all recorded so you can release it as a
Your
podcast
people can
afterwards.
speak to my people and
I'll fax you a memo.
do that. Yeah.
Excellent.
I don't
Excellent.
know where that'll come out somewhere, but
Yeah, buy me some more of this. Laura, I'm really sorry that this has turned
No,
into like an
I'm,
infomercial for Scott Cassenrenny.
it's just because I'd be really interested, but I'm getting married on the 30th, so I don't think I can
Ooh.
commit to flying to Ireland to then come back. So yeah, I'd be
I
really
don't I
interested to
don't see your
hear.
commitment to this, Laura. I'm going to be honest. All right. I'm just not
Yeah.
seeing the commitment.
Didn't need the small print in the disclaimer, did you? Once you
Yeah.
come on the podcast, you belong to us. Um, which
Tell your
I,
fiance just to wait. I don't know. I'm just
It'd be
Yeah, just I'm
fine.
busy. Sorry, got other things
If you
going on.
loved
Other
me,
things going on, yeah. No. Well,
if you loved me,
congratulations
you'd let me. Yeah.
Thank you.
on your upcoming nuptials. I think that's what they say. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
Hey,
very exciting. I'm yeah, very keen,
excellent.
very ready.
Laura, we do want to get to your stuff, but I do have just realized as well that today is the 4th of March. We have still not heard from the Children's Minister or the Department for
Mm,
Education about the Adoption Special Guardian
I've seen a petition.
support fund. There's a petition, there's an all sorts of things.
Mm,
And I don't know whether you're familiar with it, Laura, at all, about the whole shenanigans around the Adoption Support Fund, sorry, the Adoption Special Guardian Support Fund. Is
Yeah.
that there's been no announcement and people don't know whether it's going to continue beyond the 1st of April or even Adoption England, which is kind of the oversight strategic lead on the whole issue. And it just feels like absolute chaos. So I'm interested
Yeah.
in your thoughts and reflections because but this will go out in a couple of days, it'll go out on the 8th. I don't know, we might have an announcement by then, if so, it'll all be redundant. But any thoughts, reflections, team, posse, podcast posse?
I think it's tricky because there is so many people relying on that support fund and there's so much riding on that, especially when it comes to I've like been through we went through connected persons fostering and then we eventually adopted my younger brother. So having been part of that system and seeing like the different things that you need to buy to be able to fit the criteria of fostering and adoption, the adoption support fund is, kind of essential. And also when it comes to post-adoption support for the kids, support for the parents. Like it is primary to adoption. And the fact that there's been nothing announced is kind of a little bit alarming. Like it's a bit, why has there
mm,
Yeah,
been nothing said?
yeah. And especially,
yeah,
I think we were hopeful that, I mean, let's be honest, the previous government brought the ASF in,
yeah.
and now, obviously it's transitioned and developed into the what's it, AS?
Adoption
Adoption.
Special Guardianship Fund,
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not in.
Support Fund. I know you're not in
I
Ireland.
don't do it every day, so yeah, exactly. And I think we all hoped that, with a
Yeah,
different party, should we say, in government, that it would be very different. And it's almost like they've just ignored it. I mean, even I've seen some kind of responses to letters and emails that have been written to the Department for Education. It's just like, yes, we know, but we're not there yet. And
Mm.
and I saw the petition the other day. I think it was Louise Beaumère who posted on LinkedIn. Is it Louise Beaumère? Yeah, isn't it? See, you can
I've
tell
seen
I've
it.
been away from the UK for a long time. I can't
Yeah,
even pronounce the names now, but um, yeah, and I was just like, oh God, because I'm not really involved in that side now because we can't get it
yeah.
here. So there's
No,
just,
it's
but it's just ridiculous. And, Laura mentioned it the right way around for me because, it's a fund to support children and their families, not families and their children kind of thing. And these children who are going to be left in limbo with some of the stuff that they
Mm.
might need to be able to kind of fill the gaps. It's not going to repair and cure completely, but it's going to support them to be able to get to. It's the Labour Party are supposed to be the people that do this sort of stuff, and they're just
yeah.
letting these kids down. That's ridiculous. It's
Well,
terrible.
even the weight is causing a problem. Even if they say yes, it's still the problem is caused this stuff. So I have no idea what's going to happen. But we'll watch this space. I am conscious that Laura, you are a PhD student and you got in touch with us. And so for those watching on video, they will be able to see that Laura's going to show some slides. But Laura,
Yeah.
while I'm going to ask you to multitask now, I'm asking you
And
to press
if
slides.
you're not watching on video, you can go to our YouTube channel and you can watch it there.
Yeah, or we'll post it on our
Sorry, Al Coates' YouTube channel
I'll
because it's
give
Al
over just
Coates
because I
from
don't know how
whatever.
to work the buttons anymore. They're constantly changing. But Laura got in touch in terms of the specific study that she is doing, your PhD study. So, Laura, can you maybe start at the beginning, which is you already shared a little bit about your own story. So, tell us who you are and kind of what brings you to the foot of the adoption stairs.
I love that saying. That's a great phrase.
Thank you. I just
Um,
made it up.
yeah, you should clip that soundbite.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I'm Laura. I'm a PhD student at the University of Southampton. And my research looks at primarily, it looks at trauma and the influence on how we understand emotions in other people, how we recognize emotions from faces, how we control our own emotions, and how we understand what emotionally is going on in ourselves. So how can we identify, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling happy, even to the sense of, I'm feeling hungry, I'm feeling thirsty. There's a lot of research on how trauma impacts these different elements of what we do and who we are emotionally, but the research doesn't really look at it all in one. It kind of looks at it in different segmented
Yeah.
parts. So it would be like trauma and emotion regulation, which is how we control emotions, trauma and emotion recognition is how we identify emotions. And it just seemed to me really kind of glaringly obvious. It's like, why are we not looking at it as a whole? Like, why are we picking apart different,
Yeah.
parts of the same process, essentially? So my research is looking to fill that gap. It's looking to come in and say, so we know trauma has an impact on our emotional skills in different ways, but how does it have an impact on our whole emotional system? So everything from, that identifying to regulating to controlling, whatever it is. The kind of thing that got me into this area of research is as I was leaving to join university, we were made aware that there was someone in my family who, parents would be unable to care for him, and would we potentially be able to step up and, go through connected persons fostering? Obviously, circumstances didn't allow for them to go back into their birth family. So we went through the connected persons fostering process. And then back in 2020, we ended up adopting him. And in my studies, I found out about some different research on trauma and how it impacts the brain. So I'm sure you guys are probably familiar with some of the research that shows that when we experience abuse or neglect, different parts of our brain, they literally they grow differently because we're exposed to different things in our environment. So for example, children that are abused, they have a larger amygdala, which is the brain area associated with fear and with those very primal, intense emotions. And I remember seeing that and thinking, whoa, that's crazy that, our brain can do that, and that it is, our body's way of adapting to these really extreme environments. So that kind of pushed me to study this research area. And then, it just so happens that I have my little adopted brother, and that kind of just pushed me further and further into what I'm doing now, which I'm very happy to be doing. And I feel very impactful in what I am doing. I think it's very important that we look at it, and that we have researchers who have a personal stake in the outcomes and the kind of benefits and difficulties that adopted people might experience.
There's a lot to unpick there. That was a great introduction, by the way, that you didn't, you
Oh, was
covered
that
all
the
the
intro? I
bases.
thought that was a podcast.
Sorry, that was so beefy.
No, it was really helpful. And it is interesting because I think quite recently, or maybe over the last year or so, we've had lots of people who've got like this direct link to a specific area of practice around adoption or fostering or special guardianship. And that's sort of by whatever route that sort of led them to actually undertake a PhD, and which is no small piece of work, to put it. It's a lifestyle commitment, isn't it? And to
It's
put
quite
it nicely, and I mean, it just sort of books the trend. This idea of these sort of boffins, sitting and hypothesizing about things that are not necessarily that tangible in the real world. But it just is really encouraging to think that actually this is something that's born out of your own, or has a direct link to your own lived experience, and your desire is to affect change. So you are looking to draw people onto this, onto your research. So tell me a little bit about who you're looking for, and if anyone's listening, hopefully they can sign up if they meet the criteria.
Yeah, so a lot of the research as well, it looks at older children, which is understandable because, older kids, they have more agency, they're more able to speak up and talk about their experiences, but there's not really a lot on how young kids are impacted, especially where young children might not necessarily be aware about the experiences they've had. They might not have the words to express it. And also a lot of the research, it looks at parent report measures. So parents will fill out a survey, they'll tick certain boxes, and it will say, my child's this, my child's that, which is great. And we really need that data as well. But that data doesn't tell us as much as doing an actual, they're called standardized tests, doing a sort of a set of tasks with the child to actually understand, where are they at emotionally? How much do they understand about the emotional systems? Do they understand that two different people might have different opinions on something? Like one person might like cabbage and the other person might really hate it. Do they understand that? Um, so my research, it looks at young children, so age 3 to 10 years, that are adopted. They don't necessarily have to have had traumatic experiences in the past, but it looks at their cognitive development. So their kind of like understanding of vocabulary, different words, and their emotional development. And it's a mixture of both parent report surveys and the actual tests with the child. And we also do a really fun test. It's called the Etch-a-Sketch, and it's a task that you do with the parent and the child. And the parent controls the up and down, and the child controls left and right, and they have to work together to draw something. It's usually like, I know it's really difficult, but it's really cool and it's really fun.
That's making me break into a sweat thinking of doing it with some of my children. That would literally cause like a whole family breakdown, that sort of crisis, knowing some of my children.
It's meant to be a nice bit of fun to like, ease people into it. And it does tell us some really interesting things. So
yeah, it's getting very hot in here. I'm sort of having some sort of flashback. That is, I mean, can I sort of like ask some questions on that? Because I don't know about you, Scott, but I'm thinking about my own children. I'm thinking about some of the children that I know and some of my friends and family and their children. But is there kind of a fair argument to say that all children who have been adopted have experienced some form of trauma? Is that a fair presumption?
I mean, yeah. I mean, a lot of the research is now saying that adoption in itself is a trauma. You grow inside this person's womb and you're separated from that person who you've been around physiologically or physically your entire life. That is quite traumatic. And as children, you might not necessarily be aware of it when you are that bit younger, but as you grow up, it does create a lot of just feelings of, inadequacy, feelings of like, why didn't it work? Why weren't my parents in a right enough place? Understandably, you can argue that adoption is a trauma, and that is a very difficult, emotional, and a very intense experience that somebody has to go through. I don't know what your thoughts are, Alan Scott.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I don't think as parents we realized at the very beginning just what the impact of adoption would have. And just the adoption piece. So if you add in being in foster care, living with strangers, all that kind of stuff that goes with that. And then not least the experiences, depending on the age of your child and what they've experienced and before they even entered the care system, everything that's trauma. And I only think, I'll be honest, I think it's only in the last maybe 10, 15 years that I've realized that actually adoption in itself is also trauma. So, it's like, yeah, when does that stop becoming a trauma? Who knows? That that research would be really useful, actually, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So this is, I'm not critical, but my kind of feeling is like, is sometimes research feels like it's actually just anecdotally, I think that every adopter I know would say, well, yeah, of course, it's huge impact. So there's an element of like that's maybe a cynical view of research, sort of saying, well, yeah, I think that no one is going to kind of go, oh my goodness, who knew?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you balance that? Because is it that you're working from I at university, my weakest subject was research. Oh, the irony. So
That is ironic. Oh my
it's
God.
ironic, isn't it? Of all the subjects I found really difficult and boring, research was the one. And oh, now look at me now, mum. Um, so is it that you are going out to kind of backfill some of the practice that we have, or are you looking to kind of try and alter practice to reflect what people might be saying, but now we've got actually empirical evidence that this is a thing?
Yeah, so it's kind of a mixture of both. Obviously, the research that we know and what we know and what we apply in practice already, they're already quite sensitive to how adoption and how trauma impacts people emotionally. And I'm not trying to come in and say like, no, we shouldn't do that, or, we've been doing it all wrong, because that's not what this research is about. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier. So how everything we know at the moment, it's all very bitty. Like it's all broken off into its own little section of this is how it impacts our ability to recognize emotions. This is how it impacts our ability to regulate those emotions. And what I'm saying is, and my research is trying to come in and not change, but in a sense, like upgrade, is to look at that emotional system as a whole, as a system. So to look at it as how does that impact on emotion regulation, impact, emotion recognition, sorry. How does that impact their emotion regulation? How does it impact their ability to socialize with other people, their ability to understand other people? And just to look at it in terms of more of I like the word holistic. I think that means just like a whole view. So
Yeah.
to look at it from above instead of from these little separate islands that I think the researchers put it on. And I mean, from that, we can hopefully inform some practice. So it might be that, for example, there has been a lot of research on trauma, adoption, and emotion recognition, how it kind of biases kids' attention towards threat. So if they experience abuse, they are going to be more likely to spot cues in a person or in their environment that might be threatening. So you might have a frowny face because you're concentrating and your child interprets that as, oh, they're angry, I need to protect myself, because that's how their body has adapted to, living in that environment. And, that in itself, that's not a bad thing. That
makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense. That's how it should be. And if you didn't adapt to that, there would be something wrong with your brain. So it's kind of coming in and saying, like, we know how that interprets and how that informs how the child recognizes emotions, but how does that have a knock-on effect on how they regulate emotions? So if a child finds it difficult to control their emotions when they're feeling really heightened, I like the word heightened in terms of like, they're feeling stressed, they're feeling anxious, their heart rate's up. I just think it's a great word. I use it all the time. I'm like, oh, I'm feeling really heightened because I haven't met that deadline.
Scott gets heightened a lot.
A lot.
When I
awful
message
lot.
him, especially when I WhatsApp him at 7 o'clock and 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning. That's another story. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So you're fine. Just kind of seeing how does that recognition of threat where there's maybe not threat, how does that impact their control of their emotions? And then how does that control of their emotions impact how they recognize emotions? So they might be heightened and then they might be thinking that, somebody's looked at them and that means they've looked at them wrong and that means that they're under threat. So it's trying to look at it from more of a wider view, and just to explore what potential interactions there are. We also know a lot on emotion regulation and empathy, pro-social behavior. That's such a big component of developing those healthy friendship and family relationships. And I know you were doing some stuff on peer support as well. There's a lot of research that shows that adopted kids, because they have these, I don't want to call it deficits, because they have difficulties in terms of that peer-to-peer relation, it means that they can lose really close friends. And if they struggle to control their emotions, they might get heightened and they might lash out. And then those friends don't want to be their friends anymore. And it's just trying to identify where in the system would it be best to help? Would it be best to do training to help them recognize when they're under threat? Would it be best to do training to help them control their emotions? Just to make sure that what we're doing is what's best for our kids. So it's kind of, to very long-windedly answer your question, it's a bit of both. It's informing practice, but it's also working off of practice and just trying to pick apart that relationship, I think.
Well, I was thinking on a really tangible level that something like the research. Well, I guess we're second guessing what you're going to discover, but we probably all know what you're going to discover. I think is that feels something. Is that grounded research? I can't remember. There's something like that. Clearly, I can't remember. But this idea that something that's really useful for parents, that actually often, if you've, like you say, if you've got an academic paper that's talking about, that it impacts on this very specific thing, well, that's great if you're a parent. But actually, this holistic view is what you're dealing with. You're dealing with the whole child, not just little component parts of them. And I'm conscious that in the training that I do around with parents around behavior, is that often. It's this holistic view. Why do we get ourselves in these complicated states? And like you said, that actually it's a rational response to threat from a child's perspective based on their lived experience. It's a rational response. if you know that men with shaved heads, your experience of men with shaved heads is they're violent, then you will be naturally looking out for men with shaved heads
Yeah.
and slightly ready to protect yourself if you come across a room full of them.
Yeah.
Probably all feel about that. Probably we all feel that about men with shaved heads, to be honest with you, though. Is that probably a thing? I don't know about you, Scott. You being a landlord, would that be a red flag for you?
No, I think you're yeah. I don't even want to go there with you. I have a
All right,
son with
okay.
a shaved head because he's balding, and yeah, you've got a shaved head as well, so
Exactly. I'm not
yeah.
stereotyping men
No,
with shaved
I
heads.
just think you're kind of yeah. That's a bit naughty, coatsy.
It's Look, if you walk into a bar and it's full of men with shaved heads, you don't feel warm and fluffy and go,
They might all be
finally.
on their way to Turkey to have a replacement thing. You just
Oh,
don't
that's a
know.
thing, isn't it? I
Very
was
It
true.
is
thinking
the
about
thing,
that.
and I mean, I'm starting to go. Like, you know, so.
Oh yeah, I can see daylight through that. Look.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
sorry,
Anyway,
sorry, Laura. Laura,
I wouldn't like to comment on the shaved head thing, but yeah, I mean, you're
please
right.
do.
If it's something that maybe uh, I don't like using the word triggering, but if it's something that they connect in their heads and their brains to something that's not very nice, then of course, that's going to
Yeah.
be a thing, isn't it?
Well, I use
Yeah.
shaved heads as an example for one of my children. That just to be clear, that was something that made them go funny.
There you go.
Laura, how would people get involved if they wanted to be involved? If they had a child between 3 and 10 years old, where would they go? And what would they do? And what would they get?
So, I'm glad you asked. There,
Thank you. This is not my first rodeo. This is not the first time I've been to the foot of the stairs of adoption.
there's a lot of, I'm trying to advertise it as best I can through different adoption groups just to get the word out about the surveys. So, if you can see the video, please refer to the video. If you're on the podcast, I'll explain it to you with my words. So we start off
Excellent.
with a
Paint a
quick, just
picture
like a
with your
2 minute.
words.
Mm.
I'll see if I can gesture on it. Can you see my mouse moving?
Uh,
Yeah.
yes, I can actually.
You can
Nice.
also do an interpretive dance if you felt the need. Yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I could do it in sign language as well. Um, so yeah, we have a 2 minute survey that registers your interest and it also gives me your personal details. Obviously, we want to protect everyone's information, so we keep that separate to all of the data that we might collect, all the surveys that you'll fill out. It then takes you to a 10 to 20 minute online survey that just talks a bit about your child's behavior. So it would ask questions on, do they have difficulty sleeping at night? Are they really irritable and excitable? Things like that. And then when you finish that, there will be, I say 1 to 2 hour data collection session. So all that means is it will be a 1 to 2 hour period of time where I meet you and your child. I can either do home visits, so I'll bring a research assistant with me, all DBS checked, everything's all fine there. We're also not looking for anything at your home. It's just wherever's convenient for, you guys to kind of take part. It can also be at the University of Southampton, which I think is really cool because then it also means that I get to show you around the campus. You can see our lovely psychology building as well.
Or
I
pop
can
in the
give you a little
bar.
tour.
No, not. You could say pop in Scott's bar, maybe.
A bit far away, but if you'd like to, I could take you to see
You could.
Scott's Bar.
Excellent. That would be good. Is there a plaque, Scott, on the wall?
No, not anymore. It was ripped down. Some
I could put
students
one
ripped
up.
it down. Yeah.
We shake heads.
One of the blue round ones would be lovely.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yes.
get me a poster and I'll print one
Yeah,
out for
absolutely.
you.
Yeah. Hmm.
Or it can also be done online. Sorry, that 1 to 2 hour data collection session. So if you can't see me in person at all, we can just do it either over Zoom or over Teams, whatever's convenient for you. I really want to stress as well that it's really flexible. Like it can be, you can do the survey several times. You don't have to do it all in one sitting. You can do it like a little bit on Monday and then a bit on the Wednesday. And then that 1 to 2 hour data collection session, I offer slots after school, in half terms, and then also at the weekend as well, if you want to give up your Saturday or Sunday morning, evening or afternoon, spending some time with me. But I think it's really fun. And I really enjoy just getting to meet the parents and their children, having had that personal connection myself with my adopted brother. I think I'm just a child at heart. And I love all these like fidget cube things. So I'll show my like fidget cubes to the kids, and if it helps them concentrate, they can just sit there and they can fiddle with it.
Oh,
And yeah, it's really like if there's anything that your child needs or you feel like might help them sit down and concentrate for a bit, I'm always more than happy to listen to those kind of comments and suggestions. You know, you guys know your kids best, and whatever's going to make them feel comfortable, happy. Um, I just love getting to speak about science to kids and to share, you know, my own journey of like, yeah, I went to like normal school in Essex and then decided to come to university and now here I am. So
cool.
yeah, I'm really excited for more people
So
to hopefully take part.
can I just ask in terms of the at home, what's the distance that you can travel out to? Because obviously that, I'm not saying that, but kids are different. So somebody might go,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's really interesting," but it would have to be in person. But I can't get to Southampton, so how far can you go?
It's
Mm.
quite flexible to be honest.
Right.
Further distances I'd probably go by train, but usually I like to drive. I'd say I can drive probably 50 miles around Southampton.
Mhm.
So within like a 50-mile radius of Southampton. And then if you are a bit further, do just get in contact because I've gone to Cardiff before, I've gone to Wales. And if there's a couple people, let's say like, you know, you want to take part and then also your friend with their child wants to take part,
Mhm.
I can stagger it so that I can do like both of you in one day.
Mhm.
And it would make it, you know, I'm happy to travel as far as needs be, within reason,
Excellent.
obviously. I can't quite go to France.
I was going to say Lerwick in Scotland would be kind of,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
that'd be a long train
The
journey.
Outer Hebrides, you might,
Yeah.
well, that'd be a train, that'd be a few trains, then a ferry,
Yeah.
then.
But I mean, as there's a £20 voucher in it for you, maybe Scott would probably shave one of his kids and try and pass them off as 10-year-old because Scott
Wow.
is.
Wow.
Selling them out.
Wow.
Yeah, it's flights to Shannon. You'd get to Shannon cheaper than you would get to blooming Edinburgh.
You probably would actually, to
You
be fair.
probably would, yeah.
Yeah, that's not a
Yeah.
lie.
Yeah,
So
cool.
just going back to the conference, yeah, just take note, people, if you were thinking about it, you can fly to Shannon cheaper than you can get to Edinburgh on the train. So there you go.
Excellent. You're going to
Wow.
put a shuttle bus on from Shannon, Scott, if there's
Yeah, we
enough
are.
people.
We are.
Excellent.
That's no
Ooh,
lie. That's no lie.
So we're
professional.
right. So here's a plan. We shave one of Scott's kids, we pass him off as a 10-year-old, and we get you over to the gig, and then we'll get you back for your wedding. That would be excellent. Just a note from the seating plan, Scott and I mustn't be sat together. Just if you're getting the seating plan to get
There's
sorted
no
out with your
seating plan,
wedding.
it's a buffet, so you can sit wherever.
Yeah.
Well, that's
No.
kind of you to ask us.
I'm actually
Um,
going to be working that day, just to be clear. So,
all right, okay. Oh, well,
yeah. Anyway, yeah.
I'll bring you shaved kid.
Do.
Um, so Laura, that is, I'm really, it's really encouraging to see that this remains an area of practice, and I
Mm.
think that actually it spills beyond adoption because as much as we know that adopted children are a cohort of children with, with a kind of a really high prevalence of early adversity and trauma, but we also know that there's kinship children, there's children who are going through the foster care system, and there's just
Yeah.
kids. There's just
Yeah,
kids.
Mhm.
We don't have the exclusive rights on some of this awful
absolutely.
stuff that
No.
happens to them. So that's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much. And when do you report back to the general public?
Um, so the study will hopefully, I'll have all my data collected by September, and the study will hopefully, it will be in the works by December. Unsure, it takes a long time for things to get published, so I'm not entirely sure on when that will be. I can't give a definitive date. I just realized I haven't actually talked about the wonderful, amazing things that parents and their children could get for taking part in the study. So I'll
Please
just
Go on.
briefly
share
talk
that
about,
with us.
yeah,
Yes, £20
Sell it.
the
notes.
Sell it, woman.
there's
Sell it.
Go on, go for it.
so
Sell
many
it.
incentives. I've been stacking it up over the years. So I think the most interesting thing that you could gain from taking part in this study is a personalized report on your child's performance on a bunch of these standardized tests. So what a
Oh,
standardized
wow.
test means is it kind of compares your child to where do they sit in their age group. I really want to stress this isn't a clinical report. This can't diagnose anything, but it is really interesting to see maybe areas that your child struggles with a bit more, just so you can maybe try and help them and boost them in that area a bit. There's also a £20 voucher for taking part. So £10 an hour is not bad. And most of my actual like sessions for data collection, they take probably an hour and a half maximum. Yeah, so you can get a nice £20 voucher. You can take your kid out for ice cream afterwards. And then I really appreciate, you and your child taking part. So I really wanted to recognize, just your kids' efforts and the things that they've done to really help me out with getting this data. So they'll get it's a really cute little certificate. It's called like a young scientist certificate. Because I'd never been involved in research when I was a kid. And I just think it's really cool for kids to be at the forefront of research and to be interested in
Yeah.
science. So yeah, just a little something to say, hey, you're a scientist and like you can do science. And then they'll
Yeah.
also get a cute little toy, something like my little fidget cube. Yeah, just a little something to say thank you and to, so they can remember taking part.
And a free tour, which you've said.
Absolutely, yeah.
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 So yeah, if you come to the university, I can give you a free tour. I can't give you a free tour online, unfortunately. A virtual
That's fair
tour.
enough. Yeah, I get that. That's fair enough. Laura, that's been really fascinating. I think I don't know about you, Scott, but I'm always interested to see where we sort of backfill what people are experiencing with kind of
I don't
actual
think there can be
facts.
enough research, to be honest with you. And it was
Mhm.
interesting when you were
Get
talking about
you.
their emotions and stuff earlier. I always remember when my kids were little, they were given the kind of what we would call emojis now. They probably weren't called that back
Mhm.
then, but with the faces and how they would feel
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Because I think even now they still don't know how they feel about things. And I think that if we can do this sort of stuff now and research their feelings, emotions, all that kind of stuff, and then really develop a way of them being able to recognize that within themselves, and
Yeah.
as well as all the other research and stuff that's going on. So yeah, I think it's a very important kind of part of a child's development, especially if they've been through the experiences that they've been through. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
good stuff.
I do have a paper coming out. It's in the works for
Oh,
publication at the minute. It's called an umbrella meta-analysis. So in terms of research, a meta-analysis looks at a bunch of individual studies, and an umbrella meta-analysis looks at a bunch of different meta-analyses. So it's very meta.
Sounds very
And
Facebooky, Instagram, and WhatsApp to
oh,
me.
you're down with the
I don't know.
kids. Down with the kids. Blimey.
not quite Zuckerbergian.
So-
But yeah, so I have that, and I did that research where I basically looked at a bunch of what we know on these different areas. And yeah, it talks a lot about emotion regulation,
Mm,
how we recognize emotions through facial expressions. And it did show that adopted kids, they do struggle when it comes to regulating their emotions, which
yeah.
is also understandable when you've been,
Mm,
exposed to threat
yeah.
your entire life, when you haven't felt safe, when your needs haven't been met.
absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
it's completely normal. And, that is what we call adaptive. That is, what the child should be doing because they are adapting to that
Yeah.
environment. Um, I'm sure you guys are aware. I don't know if the parents listening are aware. There's a theory called the theory of latent vulnerability. Have you guys heard of?
I have
No?
not.
No.
I can
Right.
admit.
Write that down.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the theory of latent vulnerability, it's basically our best model for how trauma impacts a child later in life. And it basically says that in childhood, when the child is in that, it's called a maladaptive or like a negative, a harmful environment. When they're in that environment, they go through a bunch of changes, both within the brain, behaviorally, they adapt to that environment in a way that is good when they're in that environment because it keeps them safe, it protects them. But when they're removed from that environment, it's actually worse for them. So when
Yeah.
they no longer face the threat or when they become an adult, they move out, they still have all of these adaptations, but it's not helping them anymore. It's hindering them. And
Yeah.
that is how we kind of best understand the impact of trauma on, development later in life. And that's what causes a whole host of psychological issues, depression, anxiety. It also causes, like I said before, the peer support. It makes people lose friends. It means they can't form really close friendships. They obviously don't have relationships with family because of, whatever maltreatment they
Yeah.
experience. But I do think the theory of latent vulnerability is really interesting, and is something that we're definitely thinking about when it's, coming to this research. But it's just important to stress that, you know, if your child is struggling with their emotions, it's not because of a deficit. It's not anything that's wrong with them. It's their response, their very normal and healthy response to an environment that wasn't healthy for them. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that, yeah, as a researcher, I'm very passionate about emphasizing because we talk a lot about, emotional difficulties or behavioral problems, when it's not actually a difficulty or a problem in the context of how that child grew up. It's only a problem now when they're not facing that abuse.
When you mentioned that, when you explained that, I thought, yes, I have heard that, and it makes perfect sense. And often when I'm talking with parents and carers, that often you can see these light bulb moments where they go, "This thing
Mm,
that is a problem to me now is actually born out of them adapting to survive in an environment that is like you say, is less than ideal or problematic or dangerous, scary, whatever." And that doesn't change the behavior, and it doesn't change the challenge necessarily. But in reframing it, people immediately start to go, all right, that makes sense. And because it makes sense,
yeah,
I have more empathy, I have more compassion, and I've maybe worked out a way of getting around it. Whereas before I was just kind of, we were just butting heads. Now I'm kind of,
yeah,
I can sidestep it, or I can work out a different way of getting to where I need to get to with children. So that is, yeah, we should always have that in mind. Adopters should be taught that, shouldn't they, Scott? We should be taught that
they
stuff.
should. I've been doing
Imagine,
this from the beginning.
imagine, imagine.
Imagine.
But then being taught it and actually experiencing it is two different things, isn't it? We say that all
Mm,
the
Yeah.
time, don't we? You do your preparation course, you filled in with all of this information, but actually, what do you take away, and then what do you experience? You might
yeah.
you might go, oh, I remember that on the preparation, blah blah blah, but actually, it might just not have any kind of connection. So,
Mm,
that
Yeah.
and that's where going back to the ASF or the AS. Oh,
Nice.
sorry, I do apologise to any special guardians that
SGF,
listen, but I'm just so
SF,
used to the ASF because I've not been there for so long. I'm irrelevant. I'm irrelevant now. I need to stop doing these podcast things.
ASGSF.
ASGSF. So, and
yeah.
the ASGSF is very useful in that respect because it actually connects some of that as well in terms of the therapeutic piece, where parents will be experiencing new things that actually they may have heard about in the prep course, but actually have they been
Mm,
given enough? Have they been given enough kind of meat on the bones to be able to deal with it at home? Probably not.
Mm,
So that's where
yeah.
it's really important. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
Cool.
that's so
Well,
true. And yeah, sorry, just to say, like, I think that's where research is really important in itself. But if we just have the research and it just sits in a little file drawer
yeah.
somewhere, it's not doing anything. And that's where we really need, things like the ANF podcast, things like, as you were saying,
We
the
should
FASD. What was it you were just talking about, Scott? The
ASGS.
AF,
Oh, don't do that to me, Laura. Oh no, that's mean.
I
ASGSF.
can't
That's
remember it
mean.
now.
That's mean. An acronym, I can learn an acronym over a couple of days, not within 3 seconds.
ASGSF.
ASGSF.
ASGF.
That's what the
Thank you.
ASGSF is there for. And I think, yeah, it's really important that the research actually becomes useful. Because if we just know
Yeah.
it, what's the point in knowing it if we don't do anything about it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
If
totally agree.
only someone did some international research into supporting families,
Well, do
Scott.
you know what I was thinking? What
What?
is the reason? What has the research been done into the impact of the ASF over the years in terms of the
ASGSF.
previous families that, and then the families who've used it? Has there been
Yeah.
any? I don't know if there has. I'm
There
sure there
has
must
been
have been
research.
somebody's, but it's clearly not made any bloody difference, has it?
Well, I think some of the evidence, there was this sort of like slightly murky conclusion that actually, is it the nature of the therapeutic interventions that have made
Mm,
the difference to the child and family?
mhm,
Or is it the fact that it's someone who's actually listening to them, regardless of who it is, that has made the difference, that families come away feeling validated in terms of their experience, and
Mm,
that gives them more empathy and compassion, and it is a sort of a level of support that is kind of aside of what the actual therapy was. And so there was this kind of question, actually, is it just people listening and coming around sitting in your house and going, yeah, I believe you, this sounds awful. Doesn't matter
mm,
what they do, just the fact that they believe you is enough to make families go, feel better. So
yeah.
that was the research. I think it's from
yeah,
the Reese Centre. I think it was the Reese
yeah, but
Centre.
that's not really
It's
in
years
depth,
old
is
now
it?
as
Yeah,
well.
I was going to
No,
say
it
that's
was.
not
It
in
was,
depth, is
well,
it?
it was built off the back of the pilot studies, which was 2015, 2016.
Mm.
Yeah, look at me with my facts and figures.
Mhm.
Occasionally,
Is
it's
that what you
like you
got your
wake me up.
MBE for?
Well,
I'm not sure really why I got an MPA. It remains quite
Nor
murky.
nor is the rest of the world, mate. But we just kind of we let you get away with it
Even the
for
Queen,
now.
if I recall correctly, when she gave it to me, she was seemed a bit uncertain, and the Gurkhas looked very cross. Um, um,
That's because you had your cap on. That's why.
no, they wouldn't let you keep my hat on. I
Mm.
was, yeah. Um, But yeah, so when they did the pilot study, which was the first 2 years, and they did that across 10 RAs or local authorities as they were, and then
Mm.
they did it for another 18 months, and then after that they published research in terms of, because everyone who did the ASF had to do a pre and a post ASF like
Yeah.
survey, although it didn't have to, but they were invited to. So there was quite a big data set. But it was just a bit murky actually, and the evidence base for some of the therapies is really murky as well, and
Mm,
it becomes incredibly politicized about what therapies you get, because there's certain therapies that are just never going to get funded because they just don't want the headlines, adopted
yeah.
kids riding horses,
Mm.
basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
We've opened that kind of worms before, haven't we?
A few times.
A few times.
Mhm.
Anyway, Scott and Laura, thank you very much for coming. I think we should call that quits. I'm not, Scott's informed me I'm not allowed to mention my Churchill Fellowship is now finished, and I will be doing an event, and there might be a link in the podcast show
Uh,
notes.
can I just say, you've got so many people signed up to that. I said next podcast. Yes, of course.
Okay, Scott.
You couldn't just give me one podcast where I get a little bit of a say, a little bit of me. You just can't do it, can you? You're such a
No,
control freak.
absolutely. I am a control
Yeah.
freak. I know that. I apologize, Scott, and
But I'm
I've
building
got
your
no
website,
excuses.
so let's see how controlling you can be.
Oh, it's fighting talk.
So he's building it, and we had this conversation where I was allowed to look at it, but I was not allowed to touch it. So he's given
Exactly.
me a link to it. It's like, look, not touchy, not
Yeah, no
touchy.
touchy, no touchy. And especially because he is colorblind as well, so he thinks that colors that don't go together go together. So in terms of Pantone colors and stuff, I had to say to him, if you want me to do this, I will do it. I'm very happy to support him because obviously,
Yeah, yeah.
I
Friends.
support what you're doing as your best friend in the whole wide world. But do not touch it. If you touch it, then I will chop both your hands off. It's that simple.
And I took that. I took that. I
Yeah,
thought that was totally reasonable.
exactly.
Uh, Laura, thank you so much. And Scott, as
Yes,
always,
thank you,
the
Laura.
pleasure
And
was
thank you
all
for putting
yours.
up with our little bit of
Thank you.
banter.
No,
It seems
it's
like
been great
you were
fun.
well able for it, but yeah.
Thank you
Cool.
for having me on. I really appreciate the space to talk about this research. And it's really exciting to hear that like you guys are really interested in, the work that I'm doing as well.
Mm, absolutely.
Cool. Thank you.
All research is good research,
As it
unless
is.
it doesn't align with, what we
What
think.
you believe. Exactly. Yeah. Our version
Joking,
of the
obviously.
truth, of
Yeah,
course.
exactly.
Um, well,
Research is common sense, let's be honest.
Pretty
Right?
much,
That's the
yeah.
way I look at it. But you have to do the research to convince the people who don't think it's common sense to believe in the common sense.
Yeah. I haven't heard a better justification of research ever. I think you just
There you
boiled it
go.
down to a
Honestly,
sentence.
this is what a non-educated person comes out with now and again with a brain
give that man,
injury.
give that man
I
a
wouldn't say you're
PhD.
non-educated.
Give me an MB and I'll be happy.
CF. That's all I want to say to you. CF.
Yeah,
On,
I've got
on that
different
note,
words for
Scott,
that.
goodbye, Laura, and bon jovi, Scott.
Anchovy owl.
Thank you very much. Bye, guys.
Bye.